Do gay teachers have an obligation to come out to their pupils if they believe it will ease homophobic bullying in schools? The Shadow Education Secretary, Tristram Hunt's encouraging gay and lesbian teachers to be more open with the children they teach, telling Radio 1's Newsbeat they have to have the space for gay teachers to come out so they have confidence to express their own sexuality. Is he right? Newsnight went to Stoke Newington School in Hackney.
When I first started teaching, I remember my first year, my training year, walking past a classroom and kids shouting out the window at me like homophobic abuse. My head said to me, you don't need to tell anyone that you're a lesbian. You don't need to tell anyone, you don't need to be out to your class. For instance, a child might say to you, what's your boyfriend's name or what's your partner's name? And you want to be able to say their name's Sarah rather than their name's, lots of teachers will still lie and maybe say their name's Peter.
I don't think they need to explain the sexuality to people because, you know, it doesn't define who they are like 100%. They can still do their job without telling you their sexuality. It's not necessary.
I was scared. I'd been thinking about it with a class that had sort of asked me a couple of times and I just basically said it's none of your business. And it was quite a tough class and I just thought, oh, they're going to crucify me. But actually I said yes. Eventually I said, yes, I'm a lesbian, da-da-da. And actually they were great.
I don't think that teachers have to be open about their sexuality, but if they choose to, I think us as students we have to accept it. And I think it is good that teachers come out because they do act as role models to the younger students.
Young people are just so open, you know, and lots of people are scared, you know, that young people are going to have a fit because you've talked about LGBT stuff, but actually the kids 9 out of 10 times are brilliant when you start talking to them. It's normally the parents or the outside influence where some problems may come in.
We've had a teacher who used to have banners up and she used to promote it a lot. We would just sit in lesson and she would talk to us in the beginning about it and she would say it's perfectly fine to come out, it's acceptable, it's a good thing if that's what you are. And it's been encouraged a lot throughout the school.
You've got a heterosexual teacher in front of you, does that make you heterosexual? If you've got a gay teacher in front of you, does that make you gay? No. You know, I think it's not promotion, it's just talking about people as people.
That was a school in Stoke Newington, and with us now in the studio, David Weston, a former teacher and CEO of the Teacher Development Trust, who came out at a school assembly, and Milo Yiannopoulos, Associate Editor of Breitbart. Thanks very much to you both for coming in. David, take us through your moment, because I know it was a big one. You still hear from pupils that write to you about this, right?
Yeah, that's right. It was actually fantastic. So the first thing that happened actually was I'd been quite ill myself and decided after having seen the film Milk in hospital, where he comes out to many people and suggests that people come out and are just openly visible as who they are. And I thought, I'm going to do that when I get back to school. So in a lesson I was fiddling with an engagement ring, nearly dropped it. Bright-eyed student said, trying to distract me as students do, she'll be cross if you drop it. And I said, well, it's a he. We had a short conversation, actually, and they said, oh, really? Oh, does that mean you're gay? Yeah, that's right. Oh, can men marry? We talked about that. There was a student who was openly gay in the class, and he said, oh, you're not like him.
What age are we talking about?
These were 16-year-olds, 15, 16. So really, that was it. We actually carried on with the physics lesson after about probably 5 minutes, and it was a great physics lesson as well. And then a few months later, I decided to do an assembly and said, you know, as many of you know, I'll be marrying my partner.
And that was the blessing of the school, was it? Or with your head, absolutely. Or did nobody...
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you know, I had that conversation with the head and said, you know, would you be comfortable? It's something I'd like to do.
And Milo, if you'd had that experience at school, it would have been great, wouldn't it? Somebody, a teacher standing there in front of you to say, this is all fine.
Well, I don't know. I mean, speaking as somebody who'd like to be a parent one day, I'm not entirely sure I'd be comfortable with it. I'm not entirely sure I'd be happy about it. What confuses me about this entire debate is this sort of need for teachers to out themselves. I mean, in my mind, the job of a teacher is to be a fairly impartial conveyor of knowledge. It's somebody who teaches children facts and teaches people how to acquire facts. And this need for children to become, you know, whatever, whether it's imparting their opinions or their views or their personal circumstances as regard to politics or sexuality or whatever.
Is it about gay or straight? I mean, are you uncomfortable, particularly with the gay element to it, or are you just saying teachers should be...
I'm a little uncomfortable with the gay element. I'm not entirely sure.
Though?
I mean, I'm a gay man. I'm not a self-loathing gay man. I have a very happy, fulfilled life as a gay man, but I'm not entirely sure that I would want my children to have to deal with those sorts of issues very early on. The fact is, irrespective of prejudice, whether or not we take into account the homophobia in the playground, all that kind of, sort of nonsense that people sometimes talk about, it's not a particularly happy life, and it's not a particularly happy set of circumstances to find yourself in.
Gosh.
And it's not something that I would really wish my children to have to deal with at that early age. My view on this is quite simple, that teachers are there to be fairly anodyne in partisan knowledge. I don't really want my children to know whether my teachers vote Labour or support a particular football team, or whether they're homosexual. I don't think it's relevant. I don't think it has a place in the classroom.
David,
and just to say one final thing, sorry to interrupt very quickly, is that I think, present company accepted, one thing we do know about teachers in this country is that they're barely able to impart reading and writing properly if we believe the international league tables.
Maybe that's
the last thing I want,
point, though, isn't it?
The
Maybe
last
it's
thing I
a
want is for
level
my
of
child to go through the difficult business of working out sexual identity when their teachers are barely able to tell them how to read and write.
There's a lot to unpick there, David. What do you say?
There really is quite a lot to unpick there. Well, I think one of the first things is actually that Milo said is that you wouldn't want your children going through that. And I think actually let's look at what children do have to go through. So children who are identifying themselves as LGB or T have a much higher level of depression and self-harm and suicide and those sorts of things, and that's not something we want. Broadly speaking, in schools we teach tolerance. We say to people, if you're going to, you don't have to fit a stereotype. Not all boys have to like exactly the same thing, not all girls have to like exactly the same thing. So I think that's the first issue, that we're teaching tolerance and the fact that you don't have to fit a stereotype.
What about the privacy,
be yourself.
though? I mean, a lot of teachers will say, you know what, I don't need this extra burden of having to talk about what I'm doing in my sex life at the weekends or any of that.
Well, I don't think any teacher should be talking about their sex life, certainly. I think, so for me, it's
an
an entirely...
isn't it? I mean, I don't know who these teachers are that are desperate to express themselves in the classroom, whether they would be better suited to a gay dance troupe
Milo,
in the classroom.
is it okay for a teacher to say, my wife and I at the weekend went and saw this? Is that okay?
Well, I don't see that it's particularly relevant to their teaching abilities, but I think that perhaps it would be a good thing to do to simply gloss over the subject if most teachers did.
OK, so in that case, I'll say, well, my husband and I did this at the weekend, and there's really no difference, is there?
Well, you don't see a difference. I obviously do see a difference because I understand that, irrespective of prejudice and homophobia, which we can all agree is a bad thing, but which doesn't really exist in the playground.
But you're not even trying to fight it, right? You're not even suggesting it should be overcome. You're saying run away from it.
No, what I'm saying is that children shouldn't necessarily be exposed to it that early. I don't necessarily want my children to have to deal with that sort of question that early. And also, let's be frank, none among us is rash or arrogant enough to say that we know the difference between nature and nurture in what makes somebody gay. The gay lobby likes to say we're born this way, which has no basis in science
guys,
whatsoever.
We have, of course, run out of time, but fascinating. Thank you both for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Now, all this week, Newsnight's hearing from voices outside